Okay, well, it's 12:05, so I'm going to jump in. Hopefully people will still be able to trickle in. If not, then they'll get the recording. Um, okay, so let's do play. Okay. Can you guys see just the first page? Okay, we're good. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, you guys, on your lunch break. This is our first workshop. So if there are some more technical glitches, then I apologize in advance, but the information should be pretty good, and just really grateful for you guys taking the time. So quick intros. I'm Sarah. I'm an executive recruiter, and I own Bayview Talent, which is a recruiting agency that specializes in hiring for go-to-market teams for primarily Series A startups. So I've hired a bunch of people, worked with some really great companies, and I am joined by the lovely Christine, who has been a founder at a bunch of different startups. She's hired a ton of people. She has a consulting firm of her own, and she also has quite a following on TikTok, where she gives a ton of advice on career stuff. So if you are on TikTok, find her over there. What's your handle, Christine?
It's a Career with Christine.
Yeah, so I should have put that on here, but I'll put that in the email when when this is all done. So I want to start with why we're here. And I probably don't have to tell you guys this, but the job market is pretty tough right now. I'm hearing that a lot of people are applying to 100+ companies to get one interview. Folks that are employed are stressed out about layoffs and quiet firing, and it seems like there are a ton of candidates for any given open role. And that's having a really big impact on who we are and how we feel about the world, right? There's anxiety about finances and, what's the future going to look like? It's leading to confusion because the things that you used to do to get jobs aren't working anymore. And maybe you're getting rejected from positions that you know that you're qualified for. And in a world where we really identify with what we do, it's hard to know if we're out of work, who are we? Um, and so what I want you guys to know is that if you are feeling any of these things, that it's not your fault. And it's not always going to be this way. And there are also some, concrete steps that you can take, and some advice that we have that you can do today to really change that story around. And that's why Christine and I have been working so hard the past couple of months to create a bunch of different resources in different formats and lengths. And obviously we have the workshop today. We will have more of those as well. We have a checklist, we have a guide. We're also doing a master class next month for people who want a little bit more one-on-one attention. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in the meantime, we wanted to make sure that you had a ton of free resources that you could use to implement these strategies today. And this has the guide and checklist both have a lot of the information that will be in the master class. And we're just getting started, but we had a couple beta users in the master class, and some of them have reported that within 24 hours of implementing our strategies, they've gotten recruiter outreach for the first time for roles that they really like. One woman went from literally 0 to 36 recruiter in-mails overnight. So this stuff really works. So let's get into it. First thing I need you to know is that the world of recruiting has changed. And so what that means is that the way that you apply to jobs needs to change as well. I know you guys know this guy, the resume. And the first thing I'm going to say is that LinkedIn has all but replaced the resume. Recruiters and hiring managers prefer to compare candidates on LinkedIn because the formatting is the same as opposed to a resume where it's hard to know where information is. And it's not a static document, right? You can go to somebody's profile, you can click on their company name and understand what's the company size, what stage are they, what industry are they in. So yeah, so that's the first thing to know, is that is that that's really where the recruiters are. And most of the best jobs are not actually even going to be posted. A lot of times recruiters will actually actively source for the roles that they're hiring for. That's more true the more senior the role is, but it's even true for more junior roles as well. I have a new client, new search with a client this week for an operations specialist position. And the head of HR said, you know what, I don't want to post this role because I posted it a couple months ago and everybody was underqualified. And so a lot of times applicant pools can actually be more of a time suck than they're worth. And whether or not that's something you want to hear or sounds fair, at the end of the day, these companies want to hire people quickly and they want to hire the right people quickly. The other thing that has become really apparent to me is that these open positions are becoming more and more specific. What it is that these recruiters are looking for, there are, I mean, just so many different things, so many boxes that I need to check. Some of them will be on a job description if you find a job description, some of them won't. But they're extremely specific. And so you need to go where the recruiters are. You need to go where the eyeballs are. That's LinkedIn. And your job is to help recruiters understand quickly what your skills are and how they relate to the position that they're looking to fill. Our job is to help you understand what information matters and where you should put it. And then the last piece, the most important piece is, oh, that arrow was supposed to go the other way, is how to actually articulate what it is that you're really good at. Each of us has something unique to bring to the table, something that will make employers open doors for you and increase comp bands for you, go to bat for you. But sometimes it's hard to know what those are because we're a little bit too close to our stories, right? And a lot of times the things that we're really good at come naturally to us. But once you're able to figure out what your wow factor is, you're going to be able to better communicate your value in not just on LinkedIn, but also in interviews and in real life. And you'll start to actually apply and interview for roles that you're more qualified for, which then will give you more leverage in salary negotiations, because the better fit you are for the role that you're going after, the more the company is going to want you. So I want to go over a couple of examples. So this is something that I see all of the time. And the point here is that this profile, this person may be a perfect fit for the role that I'm looking for. She may check off all of the boxes, but I have no idea. I have no idea what she does. I have no idea what the company does, what the revenue is, what types of customers is she working with? How big is her team? Does she even have a team? And so as a recruiter who's trying to optimize for efficiency, it doesn't matter if she's qualified. I'm going to move to the next person. This is when I see a profile like this, as Christine likes to say, I do a little happy dance. And it's because I already have all of this information. I know what the company's doing in terms of revenue. I know the industry. I know the team size. I know the customer size. And so it's possible that this person isn't a good fit for what I'm looking for, but at least I know that. And I can kind of make a definitive decision either way. He also does a really good job of explaining his specific accomplishments as well. So real quick, I want to show you LinkedIn Corporate Recruiter. If you haven't seen this, I pay like $7,000 a year for the most powerful recruiting tool on the planet. And I have access to all of these filters. The point here, again, is specificity. I can get super, 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 super specific about who is showing up in my search results. which means that the less information you have on your profile, the less likely it is that you will show up in my search results. Okay, great, Sarah. Well, but what information matters, right? And where are we going to put it? The where is, for me, the about section and the experience section are way more important than anywhere else. It's a really good, they're both really good opportunities to get specific about what value you bring. You can add a bunch of keywords there, but those are the two places I look. So we're going to focus on those two today. The about section, there's no real one size fits all. Some things that you might want to include, start with an intro paragraph, include what you've done, as well as your skills, what your accomplishments are. And it's also an opportunity to add a little bit of personal flair. So introduce yourself. The personal flair piece is not required, but it can leave a lasting impression. And this is a great example. In the the slide deck that I send out will look better than this. When I converted it over to PowerPoint, it kind of got all wonky. But this woman, Joey, I sourced her for a marketing role years ago, and I still remember this woman. I literally looked for her profile to use as an example. The first thing that she says is, I believe in slow jams and girl power. And then she ends with, all right, let's make some money moves. And then in between, she has all of these really specific accomplishments. She's got some emojis in there. Yeah, super memorable. Really, really strong about section. I also really like this one. It's not nearly as fun, but it's jam-packed with keywords. It's super specific, and it has this, technical skills and area of expertise section. Christine and I like to call that the TLDR, too long don't read. But just putting those very, very specific skills in, you don't need full sentences. I love to see this. Okay, but what information? Now, this is really the crux of what Christine and I have been working on in the masterclass, in the guide, in the checklist, because everybody's really different, right? But it might help to think about it in these buckets of what companies have you worked for, what impact have you driven, what skills do you have? And most of the keywords that I search for answer these questions. So this is a really good place to start. Again, the guide is probably the other place where we call it the brain dump. But be as specific as possible. Include everything. You can always, when you're brainstorming, you can always take stuff out later. I can't tell you how many times I've searched for Excel, but people think that Excel is like, oh, whatever. I know Microsoft Word. I know Microsoft Excel. No, I search for Excel. So put it on there if you're good at Excel. Slack, put it on there. And if you manage a team, please, 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 please tell me how many people are on your team. Do not forget that data point. And if you're still stuck, ask your friends or your colleagues. It can be really hard to, see ourselves from a different perspective. So you might be surprised what you find. Okay, the experience section, unlike the about section, almost every great experience section I've seen follows a pretty standardized format. And that is, start with a quick pitch of the company you work for. This context is really, really helpful as I'm trying to understand your role within this company. And then I want just bullets. What's your role and what are your accomplishments? Try to use as many numbers and KPIs as possible, but as few words as possible if you can. And then you can add some skills. I have a love-hate relationship with skills. If you do add skills, make them something that's like a hard skill or a technical skill. If you say, I'm easily adaptable or I'm a team player, like that doesn't tell me anything. So keep them short and sweet, and make sure not to rely too much on them. And feel free to not use skills if you want. I don't care. example of a really strong one. So here we can see he tells us exactly what Unstoppable Domains does. We know he was the first product hire. He reported to the CEO. He helped scale the company from about 50 million ARR to over $1 billion. This gives me a really, 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 really good sense of exactly what he does. Same with this one. Christine, do you recognize this? This is you, isn't it?
Yes, I'm also smiling because a couple of my former colleagues are here, so they also recognize it, but for a different reason.
Oh. Yeah, so Christine does a great job here. Again, I know exactly what Artera is, what funding round they got to, how much funding they received, but then also when did she join? She was the first CS hire, first woman on the exec team. I just love this. I mean,
And
so
Sarah, I wanted to mention Kevin asked a great question. I think this is the right time to answer it. I know it's hard for you. I don't think you
no,
can
thank you.
see the
Yeah, I'm
questions.
not seeing it, so please interrupt me.
So Kevin, the question is there risk of sharing some information like annual recurring revenue, retention numbers for private companies? How do you balance that?
Yeah,
And my take on this, Sarah, I know you have a similar kind of opinion, but feel free to riff, is that if it is publicly available information, absolutely share it. And also, if it's information that you don't feel would put the company at a disadvantage, publicly share it. When in doubt, if still employed at the company, you can discuss that with your boss or with senior leadership if you're concerned. But if you're in a customer success kind of a function and you don't say, I'm managing a book of business valued at 10 million across 6 accounts, maybe someone is going to think, oh, they're an SMB or a mid-market kind of relationship manager, which is a different skill set. So I would never ever, for example, disclose how much MD Live sold for. Ben, who's also on this call, and I, we know what it sold for, but it was never publicly announced. So I would never tell the world how much it was sold for, but I will say how big my accounts were, how much money I drove, and what I managed. So Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to add some color there, but I thought because
yeah,
you already had the example pulled up, that might be a good time to address it.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know how to go back. I'll be better next time. But no, I agree with everything that you said. If just do a quick search, if it's in an article somewhere, if it's publicly available information, it's totally fair game. Sometimes things like um key customers. Sometimes companies will get a little bit weird about what customers they want to disclose. So if you're a CSM or an account manager and you're managing the Apple account, but they don't really disclose that Apple's a customer, maybe leave that off. But if it's on their website, go for it. But things like team size or the round of funding, I mean, I would prefer to see annual recurring revenue. But Series C is really helpful as well. And that's totally public. And then in terms of like valuations can sometimes, like I remember when I was at Zenefits, Parker loved to tell everybody the valuation, but then I went to Collective Health and Ali was very tight-lipped about it. So it will depend on the CEO, but yeah, everything that Christine said. Any other questions?
And thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll also leave some time for questions at the end too. But Christine, jump in if you see anything, because I can't see it.
We're only moving forward momentum.
Great, great. Okay, experience section, common mistakes. Like that very first one I showed, employer and job title is not enough. There are 67 million companies on LinkedIn. And even if it's a company like Salesforce, which my husband's at, which most people in the Bay know about, less so if you go outside of the Bay. But like him being a strategic enterprise account executive, I don't know what his quota is. I don't know any specifics about like him as a salesperson, because every company is so different and titles just don't correlate. This is something that I did actually when I first got on LinkedIn was I would just put a boilerplate pitch of the companies that I would work for because everybody else in the company was doing that. So, I mean, I guess it's better than nothing, but not much. And then this is actually, I don't even know what did I put as number 3, Christine? Mine's being blocked. Bunch
List a
of
bunch of
skills, right?
skills,
Right.
but no experience.
Yeah, we've talked about that. LinkedIn makes it too easy to put skills on there that don't say anything. The only one I really like as a tangent is SQL, because when I search for SQL, it's the same as sales qualified lead, but if you put it in as a skill, then I can actually like look for SQL. And then forgetting to include a company pitch. That's the most common. And I see that a lot on a lot of profiles that are really strong. So if you did forget that, then you're probably in a really good spot. But it's an excellent opportunity to pack in some industry keywords. So, and again, it gives me a lot of context. So definitely add that if you don't have it. Is that all I had? Was that my last slide? Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah, that was. Okay, great. We're done. And I wanted to hand it over to Christine for a minute. I know I've mentioned all the free resources a lot, but I'm gonna let her explain a little bit more about the masterclass that we have coming up in September.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope that this is helpful to you all. A lot of this stem from my own ignorance. I came to Sarah and said, "You're clearly the expert here. Will you give me all of your brain power and knowledge?" And we chatted for an hour and I learned so much that I realized this is amazing for me and I hope that it's amazing for other people. So wanted to underscore the free resources here. Check out the guide, check out the checklist. You all have access to that within the context of the HubSpot website that you already have signed into. So if you haven't already downloaded these things and started to just plug away at it, give it a shot. Like Sarah mentioned, I have seen 100% of people who've done these changes get recruiter outreach within 48 hours. So if you do the work, take a couple hours, do it on a Saturday, skip out on work on Monday morning, not feeling well, do it at work if you want to. I mean, I wouldn't ever recommend that, except I just did. Like, get it done so that you can start to see what recruiters are reaching out to you for so that you understand how the market is perceiving you and what kinds of roles other people think that you're most qualified for, because that's how you're going to maximize your salary, is finding that job for which you're most highly qualified, which Sarah was alluding to here with all of that experience. So in short, if you are looking for that one-on-one guidance, a lot of quality time with Sarah and I, personalized LinkedIn review, personalized resume review, coaching, and specific help to figure out what is that North Star, where are those superpowers, and how can you strategically position yourself for the highest paying roles. We are launching a masterclass starting this September, so September 6th to October 4th. It's 4 weeks of fun. And really, we're thinking about this as supercharging your search going into 2025. Because you all are early birds, you're ahead of the curve here, but come Labor Day, anyone who wants a new job next year is going to be hitting the market. So really making sure that you're buttoned up and ready to interview before the holidays hit and everything slows down with turkey. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can also find it in the same link. And then I think, Sarah, I'll turn it back to you for any questions. And also, of course, we'll send out the link with the recording. But just really excited that you all are engaged here, and I'm excited to hopefully hear from you all about your results. So when you get recruiter outreach, let us know. And if you don't, also let us know, because I want to help get that.
Yeah. And I will send out the slide deck. I will also send out links to the guide and the checklist and the masterclass. But certainly, if you have any questions, now's a really good time. But if you think of some questions later, just respond to that email. I'll make sure that you have my email, but reach out to us. We're here. We're also on LinkedIn, obviously. So we're here as a resource. But before I let you guys go, do you have any questions? Oh, we got a raised hand, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for putting this on, both of you. Really exciting. Sorry for not being on video right away. I've had a lot of coffee today, so my brain's kind of going wild with work and everything. But whenever you pulled up the LinkedIn recruiters filters, that's the first time I've personally ever seen those, and it's somewhat intriguing to me because I would think being able to see those filters and kind of how recruiters are potentially looking for someone like myself, being able to tailor my resume or my LinkedIn to those filters, and so being able to see what drop down or what categories in each of those, is that something that you all have or could provide access to?
I can't provide access to my account, obviously, but I can take some screenshots so that you can see all of them. And then the best way, because things like industry, so there are it's funny, I almost included this in this presentation, but I think we're going to do a second workshop of like, what did we call it? Reverse engineering recruiting. So I can actually show you, like walk you through a recent search of somebody that I placed and all the keywords that I used and the metrics and everything. So if that's something that sounds interesting, then we'll definitely make that happen. But yeah, I can send a screenshot of all of the keywords. And then for the ones that I think are the most, I'm sorry, the filters. And then for the ones that I think are the most important, or certainly that I use the most, typically LinkedIn has a knowledge base article of what the options are if it's one of those that you can just select. But yeah, I will work on a resource that has a lot more information on that and links to what you need to know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Josh, what's up?
Sorry for just having the camera off. I was trying to follow along and update things as we went here.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, like when we're talking about quantifying results, sometimes I've worked in areas where it's not always easy to put on a dollar value, or like there was never like a dollar value that was assigned that I ever saw. So like a lot of like business improvement work. How do you suggest quantifying areas like that you'd be looking for versus like just improving something? Is it better to look at like the magnitude of maybe people that you've touched, etc.?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it would be relevant to a ton of people on the call, because that you also run into that if it's a position that you're not in anymore and maybe you can't go into Salesforce and pull data. So quick reminder, just as you're going through your career, trying to capture those data points is really helpful. But as you mentioned, sometimes they just don't even exist, right? Sometimes you just don't have those numbers. So I would say just, I mean, do the best that you can. You obviously don't want to make up numbers. Can you give me an
I will
example?
say,
Or Christine, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so recently, great question, Josh. I was working with someone who's a clinical operations manager. So she's on the ops side for, she's not running customers, she's not making deals, right? She's like making the day-to-day happen, which is critical. So when I look at her resume initially, there were no numbers at all, and everything was using pretty generic language. And we updated it, and the biggest changes made to her LinkedIn and her resume are in that experience section. And so instead of saying partnered with product and clinical, she was able to say served as the clinical operations liaison to an executive leadership team of 7 leaders spanning product, clinical, and operations, right? And then she was also able to speak to the company's growth. Now, to Kevin's earlier question, you may not want to say exactly $17 million in annual recurring revenue, but maybe you could say 15 million plus, and that little plus sign can kind of give them a ballpark. So you can say, as the company grew from this amount to this amount, or successfully supported a team of 12 people who accomplished this goal. Or if maybe you're a technical lead or a project lead, for example, you could say served as the technical lead for 2 different teams, supported 8 different engineers and 2 different strategists and analysts, so that we could produce this product, which drove this part of the business. So I don't know if that speaks to a little bit of what you're getting to, but I think there's a lot of numbers you can incorporate, even if you're in one of those back of the house roles and maybe not more on that sales side.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this is a lot of it's healthcare relevant. So like programs that might touch 30,000 people yearly that is publicized on the website, or thinking about how many people you work with. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Great points, Christine. And just to add on to that too, is a lot of the keywords that I would be searching for don't really have to do with metrics. Metrics, sometimes I will actually look for percentage signs in my keywords. But a lot of times that's kind of a bonus once I already get to somebody's profile. What's going to get me to their profile is those industry specific keywords. So if I'm looking for somebody in a specific function at a healthcare startup, then there are healthcare specific terms. Yeah, it could be HIPAA, it could be, EMR, yeah, electronic medical records, right? Things like that. will also help bring me to your profile. And then also really focusing on, like Christine said, descriptions about, the company and the space they're in and the whatever kind of revenue changes that they've been through, et cetera. But also, yeah, just being really specific about the industry keywords, I think.
Sarah, it looks like Blake has a question about highlighting positives when you're in a situation where maybe the company isn't doing so hot. I don't know if you have a take on that.
Yeah. You know, I think it's first of all, I think there's nothing wrong with calling out, like if you left because of a layoff or a riff, putting that in under the experience at the very end. My position was eliminated because of a riff. If it's a company where they're not specifically doing well, yeah, then you can't really lean on, oh, they were a unicorn or they grew from this to this. And some of the people who get lucky have it a little bit easier because they can talk about that. But you can certainly talk about the impact that you made, because maybe you did something to, improve operations, or you mentored people on your team. You certainly learned skills and used various tools. So those are all keywords that you can include as well. And then in an interview, you can also kind of explain the state of the company in, a nice way. But a lot of times I will say companies and hiring managers want to hear stories about what you've done in challenging situations. And they want to hear, okay, I would have done this differently, or I think as a company, we could have done this differently. And it's more about just from a selling perspective, selling your background and your experiences, is what is that story and what is it that you've learned? Can actually be more valuable than just like, oh yeah, this is great. Because sometimes if you're at one of those companies that's super hyper growth, a lot of the shit that you did really well could actually be a result of the company doing well, not your skills. So there is a good story to tell there.
Well, I wondered too, Sarah, to your point, if it would make sense to really just focus in on what you did. Like, I remember I was at a company where there was an individual member of my team who sent out a survey to all of their customers, specifically asking about themselves. And then they reported back on the results from that survey because we were in a bit of a fire situation at the time. It was not going well. And so they were able to say, look, 100% of my customers gave me a 10 out of 10 and said that they would love to hire me. I had this kind of satisfaction rating. They saw me as a trusted advisor. I partnered with product on a new go-to-market launch strategy that helped us reduce the implementation time for a new upsell, by 50%. These sorts of things that you drive individually. And then in the interview, to Sarah's point, you can highlight how you drove things forward, even though the company may have been in a tough spot, which often just happens because of market forces that no one can control, right? A new product comes on the market, or COVID happens, or, the economy does this or that, right? So
Yeah.
I really wanted to underscore Sarah's point that it's about what you did and being creative about the percentages and the yield and the numbers that you can use to demonstrate your efficacy in that role, irrespective of the performance of the company at the time. Great questions all around.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, I want to thank you guys again. I know time is so valuable. So I'm hoping that you guys learned a lot. And like I said, we're going to keep churning out more resources. I'm also working on a spreadsheet of like really specific keywords per role, not for engineering roles, but for almost all other non-technical roles. So that'll be a good resource. Also sounds like there might be some interest in the kind of reverse engineering recruiting search. I can work on that as well as specific like screenshots and links to information about those filters and keywords that we use. So. But yeah, let me know, please let me know what is helpful. I actually, Christina, we didn't talk about this, but I want to create a quick little survey. If you have a minute, I will also send this in the email. Just let us know real quick, like what it is that you took away from it. Is there anything that you want to learn more of? Anything that surprised you? Things like that. And that'll really help us as we build more resources, what it is that you guys want to know, because there's a lot of stuff here that we could be talking about. So yeah. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You.
Yeah. And reach out with any questions. I'll stay on for a couple of minutes too. Feel free to drop off. But if anybody wants to ask something in a smaller group, I will be here.
Thanks so much. Have a good
Thanks,
rest of your
guys.
day.
Thank you.